So in chapter 14, we saw this Son of Man reaping. And as we talked about then, that's the end of the tribulation for the saints. Their time of trial is over. The Son of Man, this is like the parable of the wheat and the tares. The Son of Man has come back. The Lord has taken his people. He has harvested the earth. And then another kind of harvest also goes on in that chapter where the angels are gathering what seems like all of the evil of the earth and weighing it up, and it is going to be processed into it describes it as the winepress of the wrath of God, and it is going to manifest now as God's wrath on the earth. So that's where we left off, and this picks up right there. Do you have anything you want to say about this chapter 15 before we get started?
No, not really. I just want to hear you read it, and as we go along, we might have something to say.
Okay. And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. So if I'm counting right, we've had letters to the 7 churches. We had 7 seals opened on the book. We had 7 angels sounding 7 trumpets. And is this now the 4th 7 we're seeing in Revelation?
Well, I've always looked at it real simple. 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 vials, the wrath of God. So that's the way I always just handled it. It was simple for me to have those 3 sets of numbers: 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 vials, because that's the way I was taught. So I just go along with that, and I can understand that.
I think there's also 7 spirits of God mentioned. So Revelation likes this number 7. I like that number. You have, if you're looking at kind of godly numerology, you have 2s, you have 3s. If you take 2 3s, you have 6, and add 1 more for good measure, you have 7. Just like God made the world in 6 days, and he added 1 more day to finish it off where he rested. So I like this number 7, and it's a recurring theme here in the book of Revelation. And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. And they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints. Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy, for all nations shall come and worship before thee, for thy judgments are made manifest. So this helps us, again, to kind of set the chronology of events. The saints who are on earth through the previous events have now been reaped. We see them all now. These are all the people who have overcome the beast and his image and his mark. They've gotten the victory. They persevered, even though some of them were certainly killed, martyred. Nevertheless, they have gotten the victory because they stayed faithful. Here they are. I think we can only describe this as being a scene in heaven on this sea of glass with harps, singing Moses' song. There's a few possible Moses' songs. He has a song in Exodus chapter 15, right after they were delivered from Egypt, which is a very fitting parallel, I think. The saints delivered from Egypt, God has sent his wrath on the Egyptians in order to deliver his people, and Moses leads Israel in a song. Deuteronomy 32, at the end of Moses' life, he delivers this song And of course, Moses was also the writer of some of the Psalms in the Bible. So I would recommend anyone listening to this, please go and read the various songs of Moses. Get an idea of the way Moses sang about God's deliverance, God's mercy on his people, and God's judgment on the wicked world. It's very fitting here in Revelation 15, where we have just seen God's people delivered, rescued from the beast, and now God is going to be judging the wicked. Deuteronomy chapter 32. Give ear, O ye heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. My doctrine shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill as the dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. Because I will publish the name of the Lord, ascribe ye greatness unto our God. He is the rock, his work is perfect, all his ways are judgment, a God of truth, and without iniquity. Just and right is he. Exodus chapter 15. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and song, and he is become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war, the Lord is his name. Thy right hand, O Lord, is become glorious in power. Thy right hand, O Lord, hath dashed in pieces the enemy. And in the greatness of thine excellency thou hast overthrown them that rose up against thee. Thou sentest forth thy wrath, which consumed them as stubble.
Moses is quite a guy. He's Moses, the man of God who appeared to Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. So Moses is a very important man in the eyes that I believe that God used. And it's like when the children of God spoke against Moses in Numbers, they thought that they were the ones they're going to hear from God in a way. But the Lord said, no, Moses is my man. And he's the one that I'm leading right now, using to lead you. So you got to reverence, God's leaders and the people that he uses to lead you down the life's pilgrim way. But of course, on the Mount of Transfiguration, God said to Peter, James, and John, I think were up there. He said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." So there is a pecking order, and Jesus Christ is at the top of it. And Moses knows that, and Elijah knows that, and all of his prophets know that, and I know it, and you know it. So it's wonderful.
Like Jesus tells the people in John chapter 5, I think it is, if you believe Moses, you would believe me. There's a very
Amen.
Powerful link between Moses and Jesus. Moses is just such a godly figure. I really like the way you described him there. I think people who saw Moses, it was like they were seeing God in a way. At that time, Moses' face literally shone with the glory of God. Just such a representation of God's patience, his mercy, his justice, and sometimes even his wrath and his punishment. And after that I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was opened, and the 7 angels came out of the temple, having the 7 plagues, clothed in pure and white linen, and having their breasts girded with golden girdles. It sounds to me like these angels are dressed the same way that Jesus is dressed when he appears to John. Do you think there's a significance in that?
Angels are amazing. When you think about angels, I didn't used to give it much thought about angels. It's kind of weird, but as I'm getting older and because of the things that I've read, I mean, there's angels that have powers over the oceans. There's angels that have power over the trees. There's angels. In other words, if you had a giant factory and you were the owner of the factory, I mean a giant factory, you have department heads over each part of the factory, and there's a chain of command. So God has his chain of command over the universe. And these angels have tremendous authority. When Jesus spoke to the waves and the boisterous sea, peace, be still, it obeyed him. And those were angels that control that sea, that ocean. And angels of the sky, angels are everywhere running stuff for God. They obey him. At least
Wow.
the obedient ones do. Serious stuff. This stuff is far out, more than Hollywood could ever dream of. And they probably get a lot of inspiration from, what's going on in the spiritual in some instances.
Oh, to be sure, yeah. So these angels, they're actually dressed. They're appearing very much in the same way as Jesus himself appeared, and they are, like you say, wielding great authority, just very majestic, very powerful, awesome beings. And we don't know their names. We only know the names of 2 or 3 angels from the Bible. We have Gabriel, Michael, Raphael mentioned in one of some of the apocryphal books. But there are clearly numerous angels who have tremendous power and even, as you say, authority. And one of the 4 beasts gave unto the 7 angels 7 golden vials, full of the wrath of God, who liveth forever and ever. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God, and from his power, and no man was able to enter into the temple, till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled. What do you think of that? This, just that scene at the end where the temple, I imagine this is God's throne room in heaven, filled with the smoke of his glory. That's what would happen on earth with the tabernacle and the temple. When God's presence was there, this smoke would fill it. And now it's happening in heaven, and no man was able to enter into the temple till the 7 plagues were fulfilled. Do you have any thoughts on that? Any comments on that?
First of all, it's the good beasts that delivered it. So there's an example of good beasts. And you don't want to go into the temple of God when he's pissed off, when he's angry. God's about ready to leash his anger. Just get out of the way, man. God's about ready to do some big stuff. And, when you're even around a leader or somebody, somebody great, you don't want to, you're kind of like, hey, okay, you kind of like want to hide. I mean, even the earth and the heavens fled from God. It's just amazing. It's just so, so amazing.
So I think now we've been brought up to very similar to what happens in Revelation chapter 6. The saints are calling out for God to intervene, and this is the point where God intervenes. And we're going to see in chapter 16 a very good parallel to Revelation chapter 6 with more detail. These chapters surrounding the vials of wrath are in a lot of ways a repeat of things that we've seen before, but with a lot more detail. And we're going to see more about Babylon, which is going to be another recurring theme over these next few chapters dealing with the wrath of God. Mystery Babylon. Who is it? We'll be finding out. O satisfy us early with thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us, and the years wherein we have seen evil. Let thy work appear unto thy servants, and thy glory unto their children. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands, establish thou it.